Hello, my name is Angela, and this is my persuasive speech. It has been around for hundreds of years, from way back to 1700 BC until this day. It has been a topic of dispute of right and wrong just as long as it has been around, and it has done well to serve its main purpose of providing some sort of justice for those families that were wronged by the guilty party. The death penalty has been a significant tool in bringing closure to families for those loved ones who were brutally taken from them long before their time by the monsters that roam the streets among them. The death penalty is defined by dictionary.com as capital punishment. Some serious criminal offenses are punishable by death, most often violent homicides, where it is determined by the jury of their peers that the defendant shows no remorse. Capital punishment, commonly referred to as the death penalty, remains controversial and has been outlawed in some states such as Alaska, Hawaii, Rhode Island, and Minnesota, to name a few. First, I will share some specific instances throughout history where the death penalty has been used, starting with 1700 BC. I believe that it is important to know where the death penalty has started and how it has evolved into today's world and why it is still in use. In 1760 BC, the Code of Hammurabi codifies the death penalty for the first time. A legal document from ancient Babylonia, or modern-day Iraq, if you will, contained the first legal laws of the death penalty, containing 25 crimes that were punishable by death. And note that murder was not one of them, however, helping slaves escape was. In 1775, the death penalty was used in all 13 U.S. colonies at the breakout of the American Revolution. Rhode Island was the only colony that did not have at least 10 crimes punishable by death, and crimes included arson, piracy, treason, murder, burglary, robbery, and even horse stealing. June 25, 1790, the first person was executed under the U.S. federal death penalty law. Marshal Henry Dearborn coordinated the hanging of Thomas Bird in Massachusetts, and he spent $5.50 on the gallows and the coffin to complete the execution. February 8, 1924, the first U.S. execution was done by gas chamber. On January 13, 1947, the U.S. Supreme Court finds execution attempt after technical malfunction deemed not cruel and unusual. A man was set to die by electric chair and it malfunctioned, so they decided to do a second execution attempt the same way. December 2, 1982, Texas performs its first lethal injection. June 26 of 1986, the U.S. Supreme Court rules execution of insane people unethical, and then in June of 1988, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that executions of people under 16 was also unconstitutional. January 25, 1966 was the last execution by hanging, and June 25, 2008, U.S. Supreme Court finds death penalty excessive for the crime of child rape. And also, most recently, of February of this year, our own Washington State Governor has suspended the death penalty. As you can see, from the very beginning until most recently, the death penalty has evolved and changed quite a bit. Things that were deemed suitable for execution back then, such as treason or horse stealing, are no longer morally or ethically deemed fit for execution today. The history of the death penalty, however much that it has changed, still plays an important role in serving some sort of justice for families that have been wronged, and it should still be used to this day. Now that I have shown you some history of the death penalty, I am going to share with you some pros of why the death penalty should be in place. First is morality. It is argued that the death penalty is wrong because the government should not take a life. However, the government does treat the defendant as a few moral actor to control his or her own destiny between good and evil. Should the party decide that they want to commit evil, then the death penalty may be a consequence that follows. Constitutionality is whenever a method of execution has been deemed wrong or rejected or challenged, the U.S. Supreme Court has rejected the challenge. Our society has just come up with more humane methods of creating or carrying out the death penalty. Irrevocable mistakes. The risk of making a mistake with somebody that has been sentenced to the death penalty has not happened since it was reestablished in 1976, and there is no credible evidence to prove otherwise. Race. It is said that blacks and whites are said to be targeted more, but it simply may be because they commit more capital crimes out of proportion to their numbers. No one is ever surprised to see more men than women on the death penalty category, and it also might be that minorities are overrepresented among criminals. Attorney quality. Attorney quality defense attorneys routinely file all motions and objections to save their clients regardless of whether or not they believe them to be guilty. They are still made to seem incompetent, yet the jury of their peers, mind you, are the ones that do their job and come back with the death penalty verdict. It has nothing to do with the attorney that was chosen or appointed to them. These pros show us that regardless of what people have done, or reasons why they have come up with the death penalty being wrong, the facts are still the facts. However, there are plenty of whites that are still sentenced to death, as you can see by this chart. As you can see by this chart, the white is here in the tan. The second biggest number is the blacks at 34%. Latinos are here in the green, and then other races are here in the small sliver of red. You can see by the chart's numbers that even while the majority is still white, some are arguing the death penalty is wrong due to race. Blacks and Hispanics are singled out. The fact of the matter is, if you commit a crime heinous enough, you will be judged by a jury of your peers and oftentimes may be put on death row. In more serious crimes, the person who commits the crime is usually sent to jail, and the victim's family feels traumatized knowing that the person is still alive. And in addition to this, they feel that housing bad guys in jail, if you will, is a waste of government money. Sentencing the perpetrator to death saves the government money. Having the death penalty in place will not only serve justice for families and put the victim's family at ease, knowing that the person who committed the crime will no longer have the chance to do that to anybody else, even if they are behind bars. Today I have explained to you the pros and cons of having the death penalty in place and why it has become significant to this day. I began with where it originated and moved on to how it is today. It is not fair that a person that has committed a horrific crime or taken somebody before their time should be allowed to live in jail, watch TV, work out in the yard, or do whatever they want with absolutely zero remorse. Justice has to be served, and we have laws and rules in place that make sure that the people will not be wronged, and if they're guilty enough, they will get what they deserve. An eye for an eye, perhaps, but it is a matter of right versus wrong. If somebody you knew was killed, you would most definitely want that person sentenced to death. It would seem right for you. It would be fair. It would be justice. In my opinion, I believe that the death penalty should be used even more frequently than it is to this day. Thank you for your time and attention regarding this important issue.